Okay, I mentioned that that in philosophy we use words, we sometimes use words in weird ways. And there's a historical reason for this dissonance, and that is that in philosophy we come up with weird concepts, and from philosophy into the wild, and when they escape, they change their identities, just the way, you know, a criminal will assume a new name, an identity when he escapes from prison. So do philosophical terms when they escape. What is it about philosophy that makes people just want to get away from this? We create these words and we can't wait to get out of the house and out there doing drugs or whatever it is. And the word sensible is like that. It's, oh, you're back. Yes! Good, okay. So it means one thing in philosophy, it means another thing out in the street. I want to show you we don't do this deliberately to mess you up. We try to keep our terms clear, but some of this stuff is out of our control. Now, I used to do Plato in just 1 week, but this semester I split it for 2 weeks to give a lot more time on this stuff. Philosophy does something you could call the, and I can't remember the name, dialectical. There's this word, dialectic, and I have no idea where it comes from. It's kind of a cool word. And there's this sort of process that goes from like a philosopher comes up with an idea. It comes with an argument or a set of arguments. Then other people look at his idea and they criticize it, they oppose it. I use the word arg because I'm a pirate, and it's shorter, it's easier to write an argument. So the opposition has its arguments, and there's all this controversy back and forth. And out of that, then usually there comes more ideas, which are opposed. So there's this back and forth process. Now, inside that controversy that meets any new idea, well, actually, this doesn't mean every new idea, only sort of like interesting new ideas get this kind of process. Boring new ideas or totally stupid new ideas tend to be ignored by philosophers. You have a thesis, it will be criticized, the opposition will come up with a criticism, and the thesis will then generate a defense, which may or may not defeat the criticism. And what we're going to do over the next 2 weeks is I'm going to give you well, I guess today I'm going to give you Plato's epistemology. And on Wednesday, I'm going to give you another piece of Plato's system. This is ontology. And that comes with a relationship to his existing epistemology. I'm going to talk about a logical relationship between those and so on. And then on Monday, I'm going to talk about what I consider to be really stupid criticisms of Plato. These are criticisms that I think, or at least a criticism that, I guess it's just one criticism, a criticism that I think really demonstrates that the people making the criticism have not properly understood Plato. They haven't taken the time to figure out what Plato is really saying. And because this involves thinking about Plato, thinking about the criticism, thinking about the model of Plato that comes with the criticism, and then criticizing that model, this turns out to be very complicated, and that's why I'm going to take a whole class period over it. So, on that Monday, I'm going to say, okay, here's Plato's theory again. Here's the criticism. The criticism says that Plato is saying this. And I want to ask, is Plato saying this? How many of you heard the claim that Al Gore claimed to have invented the internet? That was a big thing in right-wing circles. Al Gore was the butt of jokes on late-night television because of this. I invented the internet, or I was responsible for the internet was my idea. And he said, well, of course Al Gore said he invented the internet. Of course. Okay. Extra credit. Come up with documentation. Give me the quotation from a speech by Al Gore, or a transcript of a TV show, or something where we have Al Gore's words saying words to the effect that he claimed to have invented the internet. Not funded it, not promoted it, but invented it. Guess what I heard from this student? Absolutely freaking nothing. So there's an example of a criticism of a politician that says, this guy said this, and that is stupid. And we can agree if Al Gore had claimed to have invented the internet, that would have been really freaking stupid. Just as it would be stupid if George Bush claimed to have invented the internet, or Bill Clinton claimed to have, or Pee Wee Herman claimed to have invented the internet, or if I came up and claimed to have invented the internet, that would be really stupid. But the important question about Al Gore is not, is that stupid? Is that it's, did he do it? And it turns out he didn't. There is no documented speech, no incident, not even a report of a conversation in which Al Gore said words to the effect that he invented the internet. Now, he was one of the people who went out and got government funding for internet backbone services. The fact that the internet exists in the form it does now, the fact that the internet is big enough that we can all have live journal pages and MySpace and more pornography than the world has ever seen before. That is a spectacular human achievement that is just here. I think there's probably more pornography than any other form of information. It's a stunning achievement. We can thank Al Gore for that because he pushed through the congressional funding. He was one of the people who pushed that through. So next time you're on, I can't go any further down there. You can fill in the rest of that joke for yourself. Okay, so on Monday we'll deal with what I think is a stupid criticism of Plato. On Wednesday, I'll deal with what I think is a killer criticism of Plato. I think a really, really good criticism of Plato. Something that shows that Plato is actually not stupid. Plato is definitely not stupid, at least not about epistemology. But he's wrong, in my view. Now you've got to remember, just as it's perfectly fine to disagree with me about Al Gore, it is perfectly fine to disagree with me about the criticisms of Plato. Philosophy class, supposed to think independently. I could be completely wrong. But what I want you to know is Plato's basic epistemology and his reasons for it. His ontology and his reasons for it, and the relationship between epistemology and ontology that he has. I want you to know what the elitism criticism is, what it analyzes down to, what the argument for it is, and I want you to know the criticism that I make of the criticism, and to know that I'm claiming that the criticism really results from a failure to understand Plato. There are people out there who in my view, who misinterpret Plato. And that's the thing I want you to know, is that I think that they misinterpret Plato, and this is how I think it. You can think that I get them wrong. That's fine. You can think that I get them wrong. You can think that they get Plato right. But you've got to be on the exam. You've got to be able to tell me what the criticism is and how I defend Plato against it. And similarly with my criticism of Plato, you've got to know what Plato thinks, what I think is wrong with that, my argument against that. And if you disagree with that, if you think my argument against Plato is stupid, and you can explain why, that's potential extra credit. Every so often, a student proves me wrong about that. Those students are never seen again in this world. Thanks for the courtesy, Bob. No, but that's potential extra credit. I may yell at you, I may have a screaming hissy fit, I may cry myself to sleep that night, but I will give you some extra credit. So, this is what, you ever heard someone say, what else is there? If they can't answer you, it's not deep. Right? Right? In philosophy, you don't just have the theories and things, you have all this other crap going on. And all the other crap going on is the deep part. It's the depth. Okay, last name.
Vander.
And last name?
Kanto.
Okay. Now I know how to pronounce that. I'm going to leave the quiz up for like a minute. Just about to raise the quiz. Okay. I did erase the quiz. Oh crap! I erased the wrong one. Okay. Yes, you can make it out. I'm just about to give the answers. All right. Well, epistemology. Big questions of epistemology. There's a lot of variance on the meaning of the word epistemology. It's a word that's sometimes used to mean a bunch of different, variously used to mean a bunch of different related things. Here, really, its primary meaning is the study of knowledge. And there's two big questions in epistemology. What is knowledge? What is it when someone knows something? When we looked at Socrates, Socrates had an idea of what is a knowledgeable person. What will a knowledgeable person know? How do we say when someone has knowledge and when they don't? But that's not really a core question. It's like, point knowledge out to me. Point it out. So if we fully understand Socrates, we can recognize knowledge when we see it. But that's rather like saying, what is a bat? What are bats like? In the sense of recognizing one when you see it. You can imagine you're walking out in the cuts in the twilight, and some flying object skitters about in the air, and whoever you're with says, that's a bat. And later on you see one and you recognize it. Okay, that's a bat. And you see a bird fly by. So, okay, that flies different, so it's a bird. So you know it when you see it. It's a mammal. It's not a bird at all. It's got scary leather wings. It eats insects. Or whatever it is. So Plato is going deeper into knowledge And he's looking at knowledge, and it's sort of like, when I know, well, think about it this way. Suppose you have someone who's really into cars but doesn't know how engines work, doesn't know how a transmission, a drivetrain works, he doesn't know how the steering linkage works. He knows nothing about the guts of cars. He knows all about NASCAR, Formula 1, he knows about all the different models of cars you can see on the road, the new minis, the new bugs. He knows about all that stuff, but he doesn't know about that. So you can think, here's a guy who knows an awful lot about cars, but when you ask him a question to tell you how being a car is different from being a truck, or being what's special and distinctive about cars, or what makes cars cars, what makes cars go, he can't answer you. And Socrates is kind of in that position. He's got a lot about the surface of knowledge. Plato is going for the gut. He's going for a description of what it is that makes knowledge different from any other human cognitive activity. What's special about knowledge. So this is really the first stab at deeply, definitively answering the question, what is knowledge? So, Socrates is sort of answering the question, what is knowing right? Plato how is knowing different from not knowing? What has to be present in order for a claim to be knowledge? Or what are the logical implications of a knowledge claim? If somebody knows some proposition, the subject knows the proposition, what does that mean? What is that telling us about this person? For Plato, there's three criteria. There's the subject believes the proposition. That's the first thing. If you don't believe it, you can't be said to know it. Suppose you have a friend who every day makes a joke about alcohol. Oh yeah, he thinks he invented the internet. He thinks he invented cheese. He thinks I can make jokes, but they're not going to be fun. Tells you about alcohol and the internet. And then one day you say, I looked into it. Alcohol never said he invented the internet. And your friend says to you, I knew it. What do you mean you knew it? You kept telling me that he's saying this. You're making jokes. Well, I knew it. I didn't believe it, but I knew it. Does that make any sense at all? No. Thank you. So that's the first thing. subject's belief P is justified. That's a justified belief. Suppose you have someone who says, oh no, Al Gore never said anything like that. And then you ask him why, and he says, well, because Al Gore's from Tennessee. No one from Tennessee could possibly be stupid.
You're an idiot.
Thank you. I asked for appropriate feedback. I shouldn't complain when I get it. People from Tennessee talk nice. So you have a belief, but it's not justified. If your belief is, for Plato, if your belief is not justified, it's not really knowledge. Now let's say you have a justified belief that still is not true. Now I'm not really sure how I can give an example of that, but
Al Gore invented cars.
what?
Al Gore invented cars.
Al Gore invented cars.
No.
Well, that's neither a justified nor a true. Nor the. So, you have a just. Well, what are the things that justify beliefs? Well, we take some beliefs on authority. Take some in science. Beliefs are justified by evidence. Well, here's a thing. When Darwin and Wallace first started publicizing the theory of evolution through natural selection, the physics community had a justified belief that evolution could not have happened. Because in physics, the world was believed to be at most a couple million years old. I don't know how old they thought it was. But it certainly wasn't the hundreds of millions of years that Darwin needed for evolution through natural selection to work. I think the evolution of humans took from proto-mammals to, I don't know, once mammals, 64 million years, say. The evolution to humans from prosimians took like 20 million, I think. Don't trust me on those figures. So the physicists said, no, the universe is not more than, say, 5 million years old. Because you know what? After 5 million years, the sun will have burned out. The sun, we know the weight of the sun, it could not possibly have enough fuel to burn more than a few million years. That was a justified belief. Everything we knew about physics up to that time said the sun could not last long enough for evolution to take place. Was that, so they had a justification. Was it true? Was the belief true? No, the belief was not true. There were things that they didn't know. So they had a justification, and it seemed to be completely watertight at the time. But later on, we discovered this thing called radioactivity and nuclear fusion, which means that a body the mass of the sun can burn for billions of years, hundreds of millions, thousands of millions of years.
Isn't the sun almost dead?
Second?
Isn't the sun like time almost up? The sun is dead. Like, isn't the sun gonna not be the sun anymore?
Like 100 million years or so. We got time, man.
Heard on the internet.
That's another thing Al Gore never said. Okay. So the last thing that's necessary for S to know P is that P is true. That is all about justified true belief. So, for Plato, knowledge is justified true belief. If someone has a justified belief that's not true, it's not knowledge, according to Plato. If something is believed, someone has a true belief, but it's not justified, it's not knowledge. If you believe something, and that belief is true, but you believe it for a silly reason or arbitrarily, according to Plato, you don't actually have knowledge. You've got basically a lucky guess. Finally, of course, if there's a justified belief, but you don't know it, if there's a justified, if a proposition is true and justified, how would that work, by the way? Well, I guess like the student. You remember the student I told you about? He believes that Al Gore claimed to have invented the internet. Maybe he went on an internet search of his own or collected works of Al Gore. Or something, and searched through it, and looked through everything Al Gore ever said or wrote, and could not find any reference to inventing the internet. References to his work in Congress providing funding for the internet. But nothing where Al Gore says, I invented the internet. And then my student just says, crap, I don't need to read this rubbish, and goes on believing that Al Gore said that. Well, there'd be a case where he has a belief, and he has a justification for the opposite belief, right? If he chose to believe that Al Gore never said that, he would have justification. But he doesn't choose to believe that. That's the thing about true belief, by the way. belief is always a choice. We always choose our beliefs. Some of us work very hard to choose only on the basis of adequate justification, only on the basis of evidence, only on the basis of logic. Others, we choose our beliefs based on what makes us feel good, what makes us feel like we're smarter than other people, or what gives us the ability to make jokes at other people's expense. You know, it's much harder to make fun of Al Gore if you don't believe that he said that he invented the internet. You know, that's sad. I don't make Al Gore jokes. I did make Al Gore jokes until I found out that it was a lie, and then I couldn't make these jokes anymore. I think I've lost something. So, anyway, so people believe things for a wide variety of reasons, often having nothing to do with justification. And it's often the case that every piece of information the person has contradicts the belief, but they don't pay attention to that and they believe what they want to believe anyway. So, is this making sense? Is this clear and easy to understand? So I'm going slowly because I'm going to make it more complicated later. Now, in the textbook, our author, Donald Palmer, makes what I think is an interesting transition from Plato's epistemology to his ontology. And the way Palmer does it is, instead of the word justify, he uses the term give the logos. Okay. At this point, I have to give a geek warning, because what I'm going to talk about is incredibly geeky. Has anyone here ever heard of filk music? It's something science fiction and fantasy fans do if they're musically inclined. It's like folk music, only it's about science fiction and fantasy themes. So, actually some of it's very good. There have been a couple of people who've gone mainstream out of the folk movement. Most of it is unbelievably crappy. Well, actually, I wouldn't say most of it, but at least half of it. Enough is bad that I can't stand to be in the folk movement. There's a popular folk musician who's gone kind of mainstream called Heather Alexander. And I met her at a convention, saw her perform, I like her stuff a lot. And then I saw she came out with an album, but with another person, Heather Alexander and Alexander Knox. And I thought, well, what is this? Who's this Alexander Knox? And then I heard Alexander Knox is going to be at the convention. So I'm going around, who's Alexander Knox? Well, how did Heather Alexander get wrapped up with this other musician? Like, what's it going to be like? And then someone told me the thing the awful truth. Heather Alexander turns out to be a female-to-male transsexual, and Alexander Knox is Heather's new name. So the music's going to be the same, which is good. But it's like, what? Wait a minute. Oh, okay, so they're the same person. Nice. So why is there an album, Heather Alexander and Alexander Knox? Some he did as Heather, and others he did as Alexander. Okay, I can deal. So that sense of not knowing, okay? Now, so imagine I've walked into an Alexander Knox concert, and I'm looking up and saying, there's something familiar about that. And Heather, I haven't seen Heather. So, okay, so you can imagine at a moment saying, oh my God, that's the same person. There would be a justification for saying Heather is Alex. Alex is Heather. So, when I first encountered Plato, this is what I understood the word justification to mean. You could be able, when you make a knowledge claim, you can back it up with a set of reasons. And this works the way it works in science. When you make a theoretical claim, when you make the Heisenberg offered his uncertainty principle, Bohr offered quantum mechanics, Einstein offered relativity. It doesn't just come with a theory, it comes with a bunch of justifications. It says, okay, here's the evidence. But it never comes with, why does it happen? There's another example. Guys, remember like before the 1950s and the 1940s and before, historically, up until World War I, what would an American doctor have been most likely to tell you about smoking? Up until World War II, what would an American doctor, if he mentioned smoking at all, what would he say? What kind of
cigarettes are perfectly fine.
Cigarettes are perfectly fine. In fact, doctors would often recommend to their patients that they take up smoking. It was viewed as it's good for you. How did that belief change? Why did that belief change? Was it just a fashionable thing? Somebody just decided, hey, I'm going to just start saying cigarettes are bad for you?
Well, they connection between lung cancer and heart.
Right. There was a correlation between cigarettes and lung cancer, a correlation between cigarettes and heart disease. Doctors started noticing that their patients who smoked were more likely to have heart disease. So there's a correlation there. So there's a knowledge claim. claims. Smoking causes cancer. Justification for that claim is the observed correlation between the two conditions. What is meant in our textbook by the term give the logos? Because in the textbook, Donald Palmer says that in order to make a knowledge claim, you've got to give the logos. Now, if you flip forward a couple of pages, you'll find him talking about the farmer and the horse, and the farmer doesn't know that horses have 32 chromosomes, which apparently Plato did. I'm going to leave you guys with a question. I'm going to give you two different definitions for give the logos, or justify. Oh. I'm going to put it like this. Call it like this: reading Plato's mind. Here's a basic philosophical principle. We have this basic philosophical principle called charity. When you have a choice of interpretations, choose the most reasonable one. Choose the one that makes most sense. The other thing is, don't make the other guy out to be stupid if you don't have to. So if you were searching the internet and you came across a piece of text that was undoubtedly attributable to Al Gore, and that if you thought about it really, really hard, you could make it kind of sort of sound like that he was sort of alluding to possibly inventing the internet. It's something that you find and you could distort it. Principle of charity says don't. Don't quote out of context. Don't twist words. Don't misinterpret. Don't paraphrase Don't create paraphrases that change the meaning of what's being said. Paraphrase. Don't make the other guy out to be stupid if you don't have to. So when we're reading Plato's mind, when we're trying to come up with an interpretation of Plato, of what Plato said, and we have the choice between having him say something relatively smart and having him say something totally stupid, we always assume he said the smart thing. Has any of you had a friend or an acquaintance or a teacher who would continually get you wrong, who would continually put you in the wrong, continually take what you said and make you out to be saying something you're not, just so that they can feel smart? That's the opposite of charity. If someone takes your words and reinterprets them to mean something that you're not trying to say, and does it so that the person doing it can feel that they're smarter than you, that's the opposite of charity. Charity is taking what you say and thinking, okay, what's the best interpretation of this? What's the smartest interpretation? What are you really trying to say? So I want to try and read Plato's mind and assuming that Plato knows what he's talking about. Because actually that's a reasonable assumption. So I'm going to leave you with two possible meanings of give the logos, or justify. Donald Palmer talks about giving the logos. He seems to be referring to giving a deep theoretical account of the laws and mechanisms underlying the thing the knowledge claims about. Like that object over there has. However, there's another thing that this could mean. thought I want to leave you with is that we can also interpret giving the logos, or I prefer the term justifying the belief. We can also interpret justifying the belief as simply giving easily observable signs that others can use to tell that the claim is true, pointing out visible differences, pointing out things. If I'm going to justify a claim that some object is a horse, I'm going to say, well, look, it's an animal. You can see it's some kind of animal. You can see it's got a long, hairy tail made entirely of hair. It has a mane. It's a quadruped. It stands erect. It has pointy ears. It has a smooth coat. It doesn't have a muzzle like a mule or a jenny. It doesn't have stripes like a zebra. It's relatively calm if you approach it from the front. It has all these signs, all these things I can point out and say, look, if it was a donkey, it would have this. If it was a mule, it would have this. If it was a zebra, it would have this. If it was an okapi, it would have this. If it was a giraffe, it would have this. Right? It doesn't have those things. The only thing that has what it has is a horse. So you can look at it, and you can see all these signs. That's what means that we're looking at a horse. And if you ask me, how many chromosomes does it have? I'm going to say, I really can't tell. If you ask me how many chromosomes that object has, I'm going to say, you've got better eyes than I do, Jack. You know, I could look at that all day and I could never tell you how many chromosomes it has. Yes? Equine. Equine. You guys know what equine means? It means pertaining to horse-like animals. That's what it means. Or at least that sounds good. That's good. Okay. So, here's the two possible meanings. This one, I've only ever seen in our textbook. This was the one I got out of every Plato class I ever had. So, anyway, we'll have more on this later. Go in peace. Thank you for your attention.